Welcome back to What's the Point Anyway? I'm your host, Luke, and this is my conversation with Emily Torres. Emily's a 22-year-old out of California, and she's the host of the extremely popular online apologetics channel called Catholic Converts. We had a really cool conversation. We spoke a lot about that sort of younger generation and even her experience with the kids another decade sort of below her coming through school, learning through in an AI world where unfortunately that means basic things like spelling, let alone thinking about deeper questions, are really foreign to them. We spoke about how she sort of became a Christian during her teenage years and what that meant for her, and then later becoming Catholic. And she's had so much experience now, sort of 4 or 5 years in the online world, sort of creating content and sort of arguing in favor of the Catholic Church, including all the blowback that comes with that. But she had some great advice on dealing with it and how it's helped her to grow in her understanding and her own humility. So hope you enjoy it as much as I did. If you do enjoy the show, please do us a favor, give the show a like, a subscribe, or share it with a friend who you think might get some value from it. It all helps. Thanks so much.
Wow. Oh my goodness. That must be nice, but also like daunting a little bit because you're like, what can I get done now that I can't usually get done?
It's if I can give you any advice, because what are you? You're 22.
Yes.
Yeah. It's. I mean, it feels like yesterday that I was in my 20s. The thing that you miss is not like going out and traveling and doing things. It's just sitting on the couch and having quiet.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a feeling I'm going to miss that.
Yeah, because that just disappears.
Oh my gosh. Well, I got to and soak it all in now, I guess.
Definitely. Well, thanks for joining me. So it's I mean, you're somewhat of a mini celebrity to come on this show for me. I think I first saw your content with Joe Heschmeyer where you interviewed him, and then the algorithm doing what it does, and you obviously quite skilled in working the algorithm to your advantage. I've then sort of kept getting more and more videos from you. I love the way you present things, and I think being younger, I think I've almost done like 50 episodes. You're the first person to come on in that sort of teenage up to mid-20s generation. So I think a lot of us, like me, I'm not that old. I mean, maybe I am old. I'm 36, 37 this year, but the younger generation feels so foreign to me. Like it feels like a different world. And you've obviously grown up on smartphones your whole life, whereas I think I was in like year 10 or 11 where the first sort of color screen came out. You got such a different perspective on life, and I'm looking forward to really digging into it. So thanks for joining me.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Thanks for having me, Luke.
So you're working now, is it full-time at Catholic Answers?
Yes, that's correct.
So tell me about that, because Catholic Answers is such a prominent website. I think anyone that types in any question regarding any Catholic theology, the first thing that comes up in Google is going to be Catholic Answers. Did you
Yeah.
ever think that here you would be in your early 20s working at a place like that that's so crucial, I guess, for the evangelization of the church?
No, it was it was a dream, to be honest, to work for them at some point in my life. I didn't think that it would happen this quickly in my life. So I was a teacher at a Catholic high school last year, and I knew that I didn't want to stay in that forever. And so I started kind of exploring other options. And at this point, I was already doing partnership work with Catholic Answers and their like brand ambassador program. So basically, I would make some content promoting them, and then they would give me kind of perks and connections at Catholic Answers in return.
Yeah.
And so I was able to like get acquainted with the team at Catholic Answers a little bit. And when I had kind of mentioned to them that I was looking for another job, they kept that in the back of their mind and let me know about this marketing job that had come up for them. And so I jumped on it, and thanks be to God, they offered me the job. But so I never could have expected to have worked for them so soon. I
Yeah.
graduated college early. Yeah, I worked for a year, but like I'm still only 22, so it's insane to me that this young in my kind of career journey, I was able to land a job with them.
Definitely. And so how long have you been Catholic?
I have been Catholic for about 5 years now.
Okay.
So I, like, officially joined the church when I was 18. So I guess, like, technically speaking, like, 4.5 years.
Yeah.
But basically fully believed in the Catholic faith when I was 17.
Yeah. And you were raised in sort of just a typical evangelical household, or?
Sort of. So my parents divorced when I was young, when I was about like 6 years old. And so my mom remarried, and her husband would take us to like a local non denom Baptist type church growing up. And so I would have called myself a Christian as early as I can kind of remember, but it was never something that was really talked about
Yeah.
at home. And so my dad was not religious, never talked about it. And so it wasn't until I was about 14 years old when I started going to like the Wednesday youth group nights at the
Mhm.
non-denom churches as just like a social outing. And at this point in my life, I was like not living in accordance with Christian values. I still probably would have called myself a Christian. I would have said I
Yeah.
believed in God, but yeah, so I wasn't like raised in a super religious household. I was exposed to it,
Yeah.
thankfully. And yeah, it wasn't until I was a teenager that I really got invested in my faith.
Yeah. So I went to a Catholic school, but was raised completely sort of secular, and
Mm.
basically my entire cohort, and still most of my friends to this day, went to the same school as me, finish up as atheists. And I actually went back, and I mean, Australia is a super secular country, and where I am in Melbourne
Yeah.
is like the most secular of all the cities as well. But I actually went and caught up a fortnight ago with the rector of that school, who wasn't there when I was there, but he's basically sort of like the lead religious figure at the school, and spoke to him about a whole bunch of things. But one of the things I said was like, why is it that, like, you guys had me for 8 years and I left without the slightest interest in the faith? I thought it was all just complete nonsense. And I was a pretty bad kid, so I was like, I could say that's me, but I was like, there's too many of my friends that are all exactly the same to think that like I was the outlier. And he suggested that he's seeing a real revival in things changing. So he said that he, 5 years ago, maybe there'd be lucky to be one kid do a confirmation every few years at the school. Whereas at the start of this year, he put a call out to do confirmations for anyone that was interested, thinking he might get two or three kids. And he had like 65 kids register. And the other point that he made was that I sort of thought that, when we were later on in school, like our last couple of years, that'd be the time to really dig into the heavyweights of the faith, start exposing us to the good stuff, like Aquinas and St. Thomas More and these sorts of guys. But he said that, interestingly, the time where kids tend to make up their mind on which path they're going to go is earlier. It's like 12 or 13. And then they
Mhm.
sort of go off on that journey, which is, I mean, certainly what I did. And then it wasn't until I was sort of like in my early 30s that I came back. But what's your experience with sort of like your cohort of friends and going through school? Like when were the crucial years, and what were the deciding points that made you decide, yes, I truly believe in God, versus, nah, you know what, I'm just going to believe what the rest of the world believes?
Yeah, so I would definitely agree that for a lot of people, a turning point in their kind of faith journey is when they're, right at that age, 12, 13 years old. It's usually around sixth grade. So,
Yeah.
yeah, for us, that would be 12 years old or so. And from my personal experience, I would say I definitely resonate with that. That was when I guess I was a little bit older. So I was 13, 14 years old when I first started to like seriously consider, am I going to actually be a Christian, or am I just going to continue calling myself one and not truly living it out? And so, yeah, for me it was younger, but honestly from the friends that I've made who are reverts, so they, grew up Catholic but then came back into the church later in life,
Hmm.
that usually happened around college time or shortly after they graduated college. So 21, 22, 23 is
Yeah.
when they fell away maybe right around their confirmation. So like 13, 14 years old, and then came back in their last years of college or after they graduated. I think it honestly just has to do with what people at that age are kind of getting themselves involved with. I think a lot of the time it's usually a pipeline of like you're getting more invested in sin
Mm-hmm.
and you rationalize that. And the way that you rationalize that it's okay is just by pretending like the giver of these laws is not real and doesn't
Yeah.
exist. So I think that's the experience that like I had, that other people that I am close with had. And it's not until they get older that they live that out for a certain period and realize, oh, okay, this actually wasn't good for me. It wasn't fulfilling that as
Yeah.
oh my gosh, sorry for the background noise if you heard
A
anything.
cat?
My cats are, yeah, I have 2 cats and they're very active, of course, right now when I like get the mic on. Anyway, yeah, so I that's kind of my experience
Yeah.
just personally.
And what were you? So I mean, as I said, like when I was 12 or 13, it was basically like the time of the Y2K. Like, so internet was sort of just happening, but certainly no
Mhm.
smartphones, and it was very sort of primitive at that time.
Yeah.
What what were you like as a 12, 13 year old and a 12, 13 year old today? How are you making decisions about is this God real or is this completely made up? Like, were you going into church and asking questions, or were you doing all your research online?
So when I was just a teenager at this point, I was honestly not coming to the understanding of God existing from like solely an intellectual standpoint.
Yeah,
The turning point for me was I went to a family member's wedding, and the guy that was officiating the wedding, maybe I think he might have been like a church pastor or leader or something. He referenced the book of Ecclesiastes. And like I had grown up with my own little like great adventure Bible, and like I had read parts of it, but I'd never heard of the book of Ecclesiastes before. And so I told myself, oh, that sounded interesting. Like I'll read that when I get home. And so after I got home, I don't know if it was days or weeks later, I remembered, oh, I need to read that book. And so I turned to that book in the Bible. And after reading it, I was very profoundly touched. And I just saw a lot of my life in there, a lot of like my parents in that book of like, wow, do I really want to live my life chasing after things constantly that never fulfill me at the end of the day? I see my parents kind of living that out in their lives. Like they're never truly happy from the outside standpoint.
mm,
And I just knew, like, I don't wanna live my life that way, like, I cannot continue living in pursuit of something that's never gonna be enough, and so I just kind of knew, like, what
yeah,
was
yeah,
enough
yeah,
was God, and that's what I needed.
yeah,
So that was really what caused my journey into the faith to, like, really commit to it. I didn't at this point in my life, I had no exposure to philosophy, so I didn't even know that there were philosophical proofs for God's
yeah,
existence.
yeah, yeah,
I wouldn't know that until years later, but there was just something of, like, a St. Augustine moment of, like, "Our hearts were made for thee," and "Our hearts are restless until they rest in thee." So,
yeah.
yeah, I kind of had my own experience of that.
That's I mean, that just shows a lot of wisdom for someone at that age. Because it's funny, like I think Ecclesiastes, gosh, it's got to be one of my favorite books of the Old Testament. But
Yeah.
it's a classic book that converts people, I think, typically older in life that have gone through their 20s, even gone through their 30s or 40s, and been and realized, hang on, this Solomon guy writing this 3,000 years ago got this sounds like he's writing it about me. So it's almost
Yeah.
like, I know for myself, I think the journey I went on was probably the one I had to. I needed to learn for myself that all these paths that sounded good were dead ends. But I mean, what
Yeah.
a blessing for you that you found that out earlier.
Yeah, it is a grace. I thank God for it. But I do have like my fiance. He has kind of like he was the one that converted later in life or reverted later in life, and so I look at people like that though, and I have so much respect for them
Mm,
because to be immersed in a life like that and then turn away from it,
yeah,
like there's almost so much more work you have to do to get back than if it was a situation like me. But I definitely, God's hand was totally at work in that because yeah, I mean, it was such an eye-opening experience for me to teach freshmen. So I taught freshmen in high school, and they were at that age that I started to really commit to my faith. And I was thinking when I was going in there, like, oh, they're going to care about their faith and they're going to be so excited to learn about Catholicism and learn about philosophy. And then I got a rude awakening, like, oh, wait, most kids are not like how I was when I was 13, 14 years old. So that was a rude awakening. But
what are they
it
like?
was
Like, are they? Is it just flat out no? Like the ones that aren't interested is just you may as well just be speaking another language. Like there's no interest whatsoever in even sort of broader questions than Catholicism, like, you know, like what's the meaning of life, or, you know, is there a transcendental being out there? Like, is there more to this? Are they just they just zone out? They're just not interested in hearing it at all.
Yeah, I think for a lot of them, yes, because they grew up in a digital age. I mean,
Yeah.
even more so than I, and they have Chat GPT now, and so they have no desire to even think for themselves because of AI. Like they know
Right.
that
So
if
they're
they
just
just
going
put whatever
straight to
problem.
chat.
Yes, exactly. And so it's sad. It's like they literally have no, and it's crazy because, I was just in high school 4 years ago. And
Yeah.
so I'm thinking, "Oh, I know high schoolers. I know how they are." No, I
You've
didn't
lost
know how
touch
they were
already.
because yeah, exactly, because it's like they lack the ability to think critically for themselves. Like,
Yeah.
you give them the information and then you give them a problem where they have to, creatively apply that information to solve it, and they don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
It's like that part of their brain is, like, missing because they've never had to kind of think and analyze things for themselves, and so I saw a lot of students were very frustrated with philosophy because that's a lot of what it was, and that's how I taught. Like, I would give them the concepts
Yeah.
of nominalism or of, some other kind of theory, hard empiricism, rationalism, and I would kind of give them a scenario and ask, like, how is this a rational point of view, or what philosophical belief do they subscribe to and how do you know that? And for a good amount of students, it could be hard for them to be able to do that. So,
Can imagine they'd
yeah,
just be
it's
like looking at you, even asking that question, like, what is this lady on about? You know?
It was like, seriously, they had to learn a new language because, we were using words that maybe they would use in everyday kind of language, but it had
Yeah.
a different meaning to it in philosophy.
Yeah.
So that was another learning curve for them, as they were just very frustrated. And like their reading and writing skills were so far below what I was anticipating, to be honest.
Really?
Like, I was in disbelief how like the inability to spell basic words properly because they rely on autocorrect
Yeah. Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
like, using text language in their writing.
Yeah.
People spelling people like PPL or something
Yeah. Yeah.
in,
Yeah.
like, a paper, and I'm like, "This is a school paper, not a text message."
Yeah. It's crazy. It's so. I mean, AI has just happened so quickly too, right? Like it's only
Yeah.
like I don't know, 2 years old, and I sort of take a different view on it. I'm guessing you're probably similar to me in that there's this whole sort of fear that, you know, AI is going to replace us and it's going to replace our jobs and everything. But I think what it replaces is the stuff that is fairly useless anyway. So and a lot, like, I mean, I spent a good 10 years in the corporate world, and most jobs there have just become, I don't even know what people are doing, you know,
Yeah.
like it's just it's delegating, it's sending emails, it's not doing much. Like, yeah, well, of course AI can replace that because if people aren't providing any value, you know, in the first place. But what's happened is, and I think this trend has certainly happened before AI, but people's ability to think has disappeared, and people's ability to consider bigger questions has disappeared and sort of problem solve. So now with AI, if you have this mindset that it's like this materialist mindset that all that is in the world is information and just basically you can just look up answers to it, then you fall in this trap of just relying on AI. There's no point really to challenge your brain or to test yourself or to think of anything more. And then who is a Catholic theologian or philosopher? It might have been Augustine or Aquinas or someone said that's like, it's not the useful things that we need to study. It's sort of like it's the useless things that are the important questions. So it's like, if you want to type something into Google, you can find that answer. It's like, so, you know, so be it. But it's the things that we don't have the answer to that we should spend most of our time on.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I think I use AI every day in my life. I
Yeah,
think it makes things a lot more efficient, which I'm all for,
yeah,
but it will never be able to replicate the most beautiful of, like, human abilities, like
yeah,
writing poetry or
yeah,
something, or creating art, or yeah, being able to kind of think truly think deeply about something instead of just regurgitating facts or something.
yeah,
So I think, and that's like the thing that the younger generation is missing, is like, if they've never gotten to experience the meaning of art or the meaning of crafting a good paper or something that you
Mm,
wrote, like, they're never gonna understand the true accomplishment and beauty that comes from something like that. So that I mean, that's, like, my biggest concern with AI in terms of it taking jobs. Like, I think if it can make jobs more efficient and people can
mm.
be making better use of their time, so be it,
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
know?
yeah,
That doesn't mean we should, like, cheap out and have, like, AI, like, robots being waitresses and, like, taking orders. Because I mean, there's still people crave a human element to things,
yeah,
to certain jobs, you know? Like, I'm in marketing, so I can use AI to help me craft an email, but at the end of the day, people like to feel as if a real person is communicating with them
yeah,
and responding to them and interacting with them versus just a robot, you
yeah.
know?
Yeah, I mean, we've experienced that, with, like, things like call centers. Businesses were able
Yeah,
to turn that into some automated thing, but I know I'm the same as everyone else. Eventually, you're hitting the button, you're like, "Just let me speak to a real person, please." Yeah.
exactly.
Are you
Yeah.
do you see the kids, any of them? Are we reaching the point where they're almost having, like, their Ecclesiastes moment where this sort of AI generation and way of doing things is feeling empty, or are we some way off that realization happening?
I think that the younger generation is feeling that.
Mm,
The amount of students that even I just heard of who had to take, breaks in their education because of mental health
yeah,
reasons or whatever, the lack of motivation of, a sense of purpose in their life or whatever. I mean, you can see that. It's unfortunate, but I think because they're glued to their phones, they're constantly, getting dopamine hits from scrolling or they have television or whatever it is, like they have any sort of entertainment whenever they want. I Sadly, I think, like, it's almost like it's accelerated the
mm,
sense of going through all of these different things that are trying to make them happy, and then they're realizing, "Oh, this isn't really making me happy." Like, that's almost accelerated, but then they're being told potentially by professionals, like, "Oh, there's nothing, like, wrong in your life, like, you're just depressed, so, like, here's
yeah,
some medication," or whatever, and, like, that's not the solution either,
no,
just that, so yeah, I don't know. I have a lot of hope in that sense that they're gonna be realizing this sooner in their life
yeah,
that these things aren't all that they're lived out to be, but time will only tell, I guess. It's kind of like an experiment at this point because we've just never had a generation have such, access to information like this ever.
yeah, yeah. It's crazy. Like, I mean, I finished school, I think it's 20 years ago next year. I honestly can't remember an instance of a kid at school having a mental health day. Like, it just,
Really?
yeah, just that
Yeah.
just wasn't a thing. I mean, it's 20 years. It's not that long.
Mhm.
And, like, it's half a generation, and now it seems to be just so prevalent. Like, teenage kids with depression,
Yeah.
it's sort of just normal
It's
now, which is crazy.
it is. Yeah.
So, maybe I'll segue a little bit into, so we're talking about sort of the dangers and problems with information overload. But then you as a teenager, obviously is sort of a few years into that period of truly believing in God, then you make the radical decision to become Catholic, which anyone that's gone from sort of being a non-Catholic Christian to a Catholic, it's as radical a decision as there is. My understanding is
Yeah.
that was due to a lot of sort of online content that you were consuming at that point. So talk me through how that sort of set of processes happened for you.
Yeah, so during COVID, I was in a very restricted state. So all churches were closed and, maybe they would open up and then like a month later they would shut down again. And so
What state were you in,
uh
by the way?
California.
Yeah, okay. So
Yeah. So
we were the second most locked down city in the world. We're like Australia's version of California
yeah.
here.
Yeah, I know Australia is pretty strict about it too from what I've
Oh
heard in
yeah.
general, like, they were, yeah, so things were shut down. I ended up, like, moving to, like, a different area 30 minutes away from where my church that I'd been going to for years was, so I had to stop going there even when things did open back up again, and so at this point in my life, I hadn't been going to church for, like, let's see, this was 2020, so I guess it was, like, 6 months, 7 months of my
Mhm.
life I hadn't been going to a church consistently, and, so I started getting immersed in, like, the online world,
Yeah.
like, Christian community world because I just wanted that community, and I just did not have that. Because I'd moved. I didn't really have like those friends that I was used to be close to. And so I was on like a group chat with other Christians, and I was like helping answer questions. Like people would come in and they would ask questions about things, like why does the Bible say this or whatever, and I would help respond. And one of the guys ended up inviting me to sort of a larger server that had like thousands of people in it. And from there, I was like exposed to Christians of all different denominations, like Lutherans and Anglicans and Reformed Baptists and Catholics and Orthodox. And I just had never been exposed to so many different denominations before,
Yeah.
because the area that I grew up in, like if you called yourself a Christian, like 90% of the time you were attending like a mega church. Like that's just
Right. Okay.
the church, what the churches were like in California. And so yeah, so I didn't really know too many other, like confessional, like abiding Christians or something like that. And so that was a shock to me because I realized, okay, wow, all of these people think they're right. They're arguing with each other,
Hmm.
like the Reformed Baptists are arguing with the regular Baptists. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like I'm so confused. I feel like almost like intimidated because I'm like, I don't know this much about theology. I don't know how to defend why I don't believe this or that,
Yeah.
or why I do believe this or that. And so that sparked a curiosity in me to kind of like figure that out. Like, okay, well, why do I believe what I believe? What's true? And so at this point, there was a Catholic in this server, and so I started kind of interacting with them and debating them, thinking in my mind, oh, they're wrong, they're Catholic, they're wrong. I
Yeah. So
didn't know anything about.
that was sort of, even though I actually sort of initially converted at a Catholic church, but just because I was so far removed from any sort of theology that I just thought Catholic was Christian. I thought it was the same thing. And then I started
Mm,
looking at content. I'm like, oh no, these Catholics are stupid. What am I doing in here? And then went away for 3 years and then just came back. But that was my position. So to clarify, you were the same as me. It's like a default. It's like, oh, well, maybe the Reformed guys are right about this, and maybe the Pentecostals are right about this, and Catholics, yeah, maybe some of them are saved, but like they're just wrong,
yeah,
like
exactly.
completely right. Yeah,
Yeah. And like there's no reason in particular they're wrong. They're just wrong. Like you
yeah,
just
yeah,
know.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
they're too weird. Like they're off in their own land
yeah,
and like
yeah,
we're
yeah,
here.
yeah.
Like that was the view. And so I just like never even considered it seriously. And then I just started interacting more with this person, kind of going back and forth with them. And ultimately, like through asking them question after question, I started to realize, oh wow, like they actually have Bible verses to back up what they believe. And in
Yeah.
fact, like I remember them quoting Matthew 16:18 to me. And I was like, wow, I've never heard this. Like I've read the Bible numerous times, but I've never like thought through what this really means that Jesus is changing Peter's name and
Mm,
founding his church on upon him. Like I'd never considered that before and heard that being preached about or whatever.
yeah.
So that was an eye-opening experience for me, and it
But
wasn't long after that before. Yeah.
when you heard Matthew 16:18, because I'd heard it too. I'd heard it too. I'd heard the Catholic position, and initially I was just like, yeah, that's stupid. Like Peter wasn't the rock that it's his, and the typical sort of Protestant answer is that it's the confession of faith. So, but
Yeah.
now I look at it, and it's like when you properly study that out, it's like God changing people's names is significant, and it happens throughout.
Yes.
Like it has meaning. This idea that, oh,
Yes.
we're just going to change your name to Rock, but it doesn't really. Peter's not really important. But I was super
Yeah.
I'd heard the argument, but I was super dismissive of it. So it sounds like you were maybe a little bit softer on that. You didn't dismiss it straight away. You at least thought that's novel. It's sort of new, and I hadn't realized that was a reasoning for Peter.
Yes, exactly. I realized, okay, wow, like, in my mind, I have Bible verses that back up what I believe, but they seem to have Bible verses that back up what they believe.
Yeah,
And, when you're arguing with people and you're believing in sola scriptura, all you can do is really go off of Bible verses and your interpretations. And so I was like, okay, like,
yeah,
who am I to say his interpretation is wrong and like mine is right? Like, that's just not being fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from that experience, I was introduced to like the church fathers and started thinking more about the Protestant like Reformation and what really happened and the reasons for it happening and stuff like that. And like kind of the character of Martin Luther and the type of person he was
Hmm.
and the other reformers. And so I just kind of realized pretty quickly, like, okay, everything I learned in the American school system about the Reformation, about the Catholic Church, like it was a lot of it was not true. It was very heavily biased. And that was an eye opener for me because I had my history teachers were some of my favorite teachers in high school because they were like one of the only Christian teachers I had. And they were, of course, both Protestant. And, looking back at that, I'm like, wow, like I was like really understanding the history of the church through the
Through
Protestant
one
lens,
lens.
which
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, which is not helpful. And yeah, so it was pretty quickly after that where I realized, okay, we both disagree on how to interpret the Bible, but it's very clear what these early Christians believed. And
Right.
to be in,
So for you, it was church fathers that were the key.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I was sort of, I'd landed in very much sort of non-denominational. I was like a church nomad. And so I'd always seen the problem with the Protestant Revolution. I didn't attach myself to any of them. And I thought they were all contradicting each other and inconsistent in their positions. But the position I'd landed on was that, like, basically the church just in the first century just got overrun, has been taken over all throughout history by false teachers using it for political gain. That includes Catholics, it includes reformers, it includes everyone else. And that all that really matters is faith in Christ. So all these disputes don't really matter as long as you believe as long as you have faith, you're a Christian, which has to, you have to then almost be sympathetic to Mormons and Jehovah's Witness.
that's what I was going to say. Like the
Yeah.
first thing I thought of was Mormons. Like that's literally the LDS position.
Yeah. So I mean, as much as I rejected LDS and Jehovah's Witness, I had to be consistent in my position. I had to be favorable to them and say, well, hey, they've got a bit wrong, but I'm sure there are sort of true believers within here too. And true faith is all that matters. And therefore none of these denominations are important. So I didn't really care too much for the early church and church history and the church fathers. But now that I go through it, I'm like, I don't know how anyone can read the Didache and Clement, which is written in the late first century. Like they're so Catholic. These letters are so Catholic.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people honestly are, I mean, to just say it bluntly, coping. Like they're just in
Yeah.
denial about what the truth is. They're so ingrained in their own beliefs, or I mean, some of these people were born and raised. Some people I knew, their dad was a pastor at our Baptist church, and they were born and raised in a Reformed Baptist church, and
Yeah.
that's all they've ever known. And so leaving that would be, I mean, life shattering, to be
Mm,
honest. So I don't blame people for trying to rationalize their beliefs and kind of read it through the church fathers. But if you're just being honest to the text,
yeah.
I think like for me, I didn't have much to lose. Like my family was
Yeah. Yeah.
not
Yeah.
really, my parents were not practicing. Basically, no one in my family was. And so leaving and entering into a new denomination wouldn't have been insane just because at this point I wasn't going to a church. So if I was like, I'm going to try out this Lutheran church, mom, like, okay, like that
Go
wouldn't
for
have
it,
been
Emily.
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So I didn't have much on the line. I had 3.5 years worth of like investing myself in this non denominational church, but like 3.5 years, whatever. So
Yeah.
some people, they have a lot on the line. So I can understand. But I mean, when you're just looking at it with an unbiased lens, I think it's pretty obvious. And the other problem for me was like the inconsistency of sola scriptura. Like, there's
Yeah.
really no way to know the Bible is the Word of God and know how many books belong in the Bible if you hold the sola scriptura. And like, it's not a consistent worldview. And so
Or
that
a
was also like,
Yeah, or agree on the end of Mark. Is that part of the
yeah,
sola scriptura or not? It's okay. I think it was Joe
exactly.
Heschmeyer did a video on that. Like, it's a great point. That is either the word, like the last chapter is either the word of God and if you two disagree on that, then there's a problem because we don't know what is included in the sola.
Yep, exactly. It's a problem. I
Yeah.
mean, this idea that like people can just know what the Bible is by just reading it. like that's like the argue of Calvin, like, oh, the scripture is just so different from any other text, like you just know. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, like that's just so obviously false, which is why the Jews argued for so long about like, should Esther be in the Bible?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, should Song of Songs be in the Bible? Like, it took forever for them to figure that out because it's not so obvious,
Yeah.
you know?
Or jump on like x.com today and type in sort of Christianity and as a keyword and see how obvious the Bible is.
Yeah,
Like, they just can't
exactly.
agree on it. No one can agree on anything, including, and everyone says, "Oh, well, it's not salvific. It's not. These are not primary. These are secondary." I'm like, well, who can get baptized? How do they get baptized? Can you keep your salvation? Can you lose your salvation? Can anyone be saved, or is it limited to only like? These are primary questions. I don't know how people possibly say they're not primary questions.
Exactly, or how they're just content not being fully in the truth.
Yeah.
Like, that's, like, a possibility for them, and they're fine with that. It's like, Jesus says he is the truth. The closer we get to the truth, the closer we get to Christ. Anybody who's apathetic towards the truth, they're
Mm,
ultimately apathetic towards Christ.
mm.
So, that's another thing I don't understand is just the indifference of, like, whatever, like, we can all just the people that lie and, like so one thing I commonly get on my TikTok, like, comments are, like, people who are like, you're causing more division in the church by preaching about the Catholic Church and telling people their denominations are wrong. Like, no, like, there is no true denomination. Like, we're all brothers and sisters in Christ. Let's just get along. Satan's the one trying to divide us. And it's like, listen, Satan already did divide us. And he wants us to think that that hasn't happened or to ignore that fact. And all we have to do is just acknowledge that and then figure out, okay, so how can we all come to the truth now?
Yeah.
Like, it's not a solution to just be content in this division. Like, that's not a solution in any capacity.
Yeah. Yeah, it was one of the main drivers that led me to the Catholic Church was that a church where, I mean, I explained my position before where it was sort of just everyone, as long as they had faith, mattered. But what was digging at me was that, no, we are meant to be a unified body. And I can't lie to myself when people say, oh yeah, but it's an invisible spiritual body. Like, no, like not.
Yeah.
It's a completely divided body. And if you want to tell me that it's all united, like we're not dealing with reality here. And no one outside of the Catholic Church, and this even includes Orthodox, which are obviously quite similar to Catholic. Everyone sees all the issues and they say, yeah, well, we don't agree on this, but everyone sort of holds to this hope that at some point in the future it'll all be solved. Be like, well, what's the one? When has that ever happened in the last 500 years? So what would have to happen? And then what would have to happen for it to occur? Like how could all of, I mean, even if you go into a single denomination, how could all of the Baptists come to an agreement on one key thing? Like they need a pope. They need a
Yeah.
pope within the Baptist community to come, and then that's the Baptist. Well, then how do you unify them with the Reform? So, like, the only way to create unity is with infallibility and with authority. There's just no other way. So for me, it had to exist, and then the only solution was Catholic. I kicked and screamed for a while. I don't know whether you did, but what was the hardest thing to let go of? Or maybe there wasn't, because I'm actually leaning towards the idea that there wasn't. But for you, was there something that you just was a bugbear for you that you needed to deal with that took the longest?
Honestly, no. I think the biggest hurdle was having to do RCIA because
Yeah.
I was so accustomed to, oh, just give your life to Jesus right now, here, right on the spot,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
not
yeah.
like, oh, let's invest 8 months into taking a weekly class. And it's like, I don't want to do that. I don't know anybody. I don't have like $100 or whatever. Like they have a donation fee, and I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
just 17 years old. Like, what am I going to do?
See, I didn't
And
have to do
so,
I didn't have to do that because I was confirmed as a teenager even though I was an atheist.
wow. So
Yeah.
you just went back to confession?
But I felt like
Wow.
a bit of a fraud. So I reached out to the priest who was Latin mass priest in my city
Hmm.
here, who's very old school, kept his church open against orders throughout our lockdowns. And he was a warrior for the faith and crucial in my initial conversion. And when I stepped away, I said to him that Yeah, I think the Catholic Church is false, and he was very much like, you go and do your thing," you know? Like, he didn't he was, like, disgusted at this decision, but wasn't gonna beg and get on his knees and tell me to come back. And then I reached
Mhm.
and then I reached out to him and I was like, "You know what? I think I made a mistake and I wanna come back." And his answer was so funny, and and the boldness actually for me is, like, one of the strongest parts of the church as well. He's like, "Oh, you never even though you went off and did your thing, you were still always a subject of the Catholic Church." So he's like, there's no public profession of things you need to do. He's like, "You simply just come back and you do confession and you are welcome back in." You know, and repent of your silly old journey off for 3 years. So I somewhat dodged a bullet. But I said to him, I was like, "Oh, I don't know. I feel like I need to do something. Like, I can't just go through what I've done in the last 3 years." But yeah, so I didn't do the RCIA process.
Wow. I mean, hey, you did the time initially when you were born in the church and did your first Holy Communion and whatever, even if
Yeah.
it was half-heartedly, you know?
Yeah.
So I wasn't even baptized, so I had to
Right,
like,
okay.
go through that whole thing. But yeah, it was a good experience. I mean, it was over Zoom because of COVID.
Nice.
So it wasn't even like I had the full experience anyway, and I didn't have to like get in my car and, drive there and whatever. Yeah, it was good,
Yeah.
but definitely crazy times to look back on it like, wow, like
Yeah. So when you then became Catholic and you completed the RCIA, you done your sort of adult confirmation, I've actually been thinking about this recently that like everything that was good in my faith beforehand, I still have, and I have like more of it. Like, is that your feeling now? And it's not to be like condescending or dismissive and say, "Oh, all the things I thought were good were not actually good." But there's nothing really, whereas I think the misconception around Catholicism is that, oh, we have to give up so much and it's legalistic and, you're not going to be able to do this, not going to be able to do that. But it's a lot broader and more open than I ever thought. Has that been your experience too?
Yeah, so I would say I definitely had a journey to get there. Like, when I was a non-denominational, the only form of prayer that I knew how to do really was, like, colloquial prayer
Mhm.
and, like, reading my Bible and kind of like a Lectio Divina or something, you know?
Yeah.
And so I like immersed myself in that type of kind of spirituality. And when I became Catholic, I didn't know about meditative prayer and repetitive prayer with the rosary or something. And so when I got introduced to that and started relying on that and kind of making that the fullness of my spirituality, that was really difficult for me because I realized, wow, like, I'm praying more maybe than I was in the past as a non-denominational, but like this prayer isn't coming fully from the heart.
Yeah.
And I don't feel that connection that I did when I was like a non-denominational.
Yeah.
And so intellectually I knew like though this is true, even if the feelings I'm having aren't fully aligning with that. Like, I know this is true. It just took a lot of time. Like, I also just immersed myself in the intellectual tradition so quickly
Mhm.
that I think I conflated, knowing about God to knowing Him.
Yeah.
And so I knew all these things about Him, but I just didn't spend the time to like know Him,
Mhm.
experience Him. So it's definitely been a journey. I would say, though, that when you're doing it properly, it is so much more like fulfilling
Yeah.
because you have Jesus in the Eucharist. Like you can sit
Yeah.
in adoration, you can sit in silence. If you like worship music, like in the non-denom world, I mean, hey, you can listen to that, still. It's not like you can't listen to non-denominational music as a Catholic, but you just get something that's fuller, which is of course Christ and the Mass. So I think there's so much more potential in the Catholic world,
Yeah.
but I think people sometimes miss that because they kind of they get in a habit of their prayers. So maybe they get in the habit of saying a rosary every day and that's all they do. And,
Yeah.
they're praying, which is great, but like they're not truly connecting with God on a deep level and just speaking and opening their hearts up to Him.
Yeah.
So yeah, it took time to get there, but it's gotten there and yeah, it's wonderful.
And what would you say, like, now that you are, you know, you're past the sort of baby stage in the Catholic Church, you've been in it for several years now, like, what's an element of it or an element of your sort of faith life that you love the most that you didn't have and you can't have outside the Catholic Church?
Yeah. I mean, the saints have been,
Yeah, I'm
like,
similar.
profound in my journey. I mean, obviously the Eucharist, but besides the Holy Eucharist and kind of what I just spoke about, definitely the saints, because being able to read their lives, I love biographies. I've always
Hmm.
loved them. And so I've picked up a lot of like different saints and their kind of biographies or autobiographies. And just getting to see people that were real like me, and had their own background and their own life and upbringing and whatever, and they were able to persevere in virtue and be a good person. That has like inspired me so much in my walk with Christ and made me realize like, okay, like even in these ordinary things, like God can use these situations and make me holier.
Mm,
And because I don't have family that's practicing in really any sort of religion, I don't have like that inspiration coming from my personal life. And so being able to find that like holy family in the church,
mm,
that's been so helpful and motivating for me. So yeah, I would say the saints have certainly been something that you just can't find outside of the church.
yeah,
Honestly, I think the saints are a big testament to me that the Catholic Church is true, because I just don't know how somebody like Saint Maximilian Kolbe or Saint Therese of Lisieux like could be real people and have lived such selfless, holy lives if there wasn't a God giving them grace to do that.
yeah. Yeah, I'm the same. I mean, the sort of theology that I'd landed on before I came into the Catholic Church, I think actually squares really well with it. So I was sort of preterist, which puts me at odds with a lot of the Protestant church. But I believe sort of in an established, fulfilled kingdom, and the idea that when we die, we are alive. That there isn't this death. So when people early on, when I was sort of studying out Catholicism, I would see people be like, "Are you praying to dead people?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Haven't you read the Gospels? Like they're not dead."
Yeah.
Like that's before we. So I was showing fairness to Rome early on because I would
Wow.
I would see these things, and I think I saw a thing on Matt Fradd's show recently. Who Brandon, someone I think he interviewed, and he was talking about sort of the three stages of becoming Catholic, and he's like, stage one is fairness. You realize that actually no, hang on, we need to not go down to these straw men against the Catholic Church and actually look at their theology properly. And then eventually he says, once you take that first step, you're gone. Like
Yeah.
the church will get you. And that was certainly the case for me. So I agree. I think this idea of the saints and this, again, it's this like unified corporate body that exists, and that Thomas Aquinas in the 12th or 13th century and Therese of Lisieux and Augustine, like these are all part of the body, and they can pray for us. We can ask for their intercession, and they're alive next to the throne of God right here, right now. It's like so beautiful. And I was like, why are so many Christians so eager to deny that?
Yeah.
It's like if you don't have faith to believe in it, fine, but it's like they're militantly against it. The idea of that is horrifying to them.
But it's ironic because these same people will be the people that comment under someone's Facebook post, "Oh,
Pray for me.
your grandma's watching over." Well, that, but then also, "Oh,
Oh,
your
yeah, yeah,
great like,
yeah.
oh, my grandma passed away. Oh, your grandma's watching over you." And it's like, "Wait a second.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
thought
yeah.
Granny is dead."
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
you know?
So what's it been like for you as an apologist who's now, and pretty prominent online and making videos, which are controversial, to say it in a bad way. I think truth is controversial. Two parts of it. The first part is like, how have you gotten around this problem that I've been dealing with, that I dealt with when I first became a Christian, now I deal with when I became Catholic, in that I have a lot of zeal, and I know that, I learned this when I first became Christian. Then you want to go and tell all your atheist friends, "Oh, hey, like this whole idea of atheism is false. Like it's, Jesus is true," and they're like, "Well, just because you believe that doesn't mean I'm going to follow now immediately." So, but I made mistakes early on in that process of probably being too zealous and too over the top. And then the same now when I became Catholic, I was very anti-Catholic as well. So then I'm trying to argue in favor of it. And I've definitely put people offside in that process. Did that happen for you too? And then how have you gone about sort of promoting the truth and speaking the truth, but still being sort of sympathetic to people's feelings? And as you said before, like the person that's got 50 years of history in the Baptist church over multiple generations, like it's a big thing for them to hear this. Did you make
Yeah.
mistakes with that? And then how have you dealt with it?
Yeah, so I certainly have made mistakes. I would say I was similar to you, like when I first heard about the Catholic Church. And sorry, I'm trying to grab my cat because he loves to play with my blinds and it's really loud. Anyway, so I definitely made that mistake. I was super just passionate about trying to convert people, and I would, like, in the online sphere, I would sit and spend hours of my day, because it was the summer, or I was in school but it was Zoom school, so it didn't
Yeah.
really count. So I would spend a lot of time daily just trying to argue with people and show them that the Catholic Church was true. And I think, when over the years I've realized a few things. I think one thing that was really transformative for me was this book called Searching for and Maintaining Peace by Father Jacques Philippe. It's this really short book, but it just changed my life. And this was like, I read it less than a year ago, I think. Like, it was not too far off that I picked this up. But anyway, it kind of made me reflect and realize that God makes all things in his timing.
Hmm.
So when I would go out and try to convert these people, I think a lot of it came from this place of fear, or almost like, if I don't tell them this, like, who's going to tell them? Or like, when are they
Yeah.
going to hear this message? Or like, they got to hear this now. And it's like, no, like, calm down. Like, God is merciful. God is patient. I'm not the only person that this person is depending on to share this with them and to show them the truth. Like,
Hmm.
that's not how life works. So as much as I want to encourage people, like, I think it's great when somebody, finds Christ and they want to share that with their friends and their family. Like, I think that's a beautiful thing. But you also have to know how these people are going to receive it. Some people might close themselves off even more and get defensive and be even more turned off towards Christianity with you speaking about it. Some people might be open to it and they might enjoy hearing about it. And so I think it's just kind of like a read the room and think about, from this person's perspective, what will be most conducive to them accepting the truth. And
Mm.
it might not be now. Like, I've had another thing that was really encouraging is I get messages to this day where people will reach out and say, I'm sorry. You probably don't remember me, but I was arguing with you in your comments 3 years ago. I was really anti-Catholic, and now I'm entering the Catholic Church this year,
Wow.
which is it's so wonderful and it's so inspiring to hear that. But it makes me realize, okay, yeah, like, somebody can be totally opposed to the church and God can work through their life. And all I have to do is do what God is asking of me, kind of speak what I need to say, and just let God do the rest. And I
Mm.
don't have to put that burden on me of like, I have to show these people the truth, because I don't. And I can't do that. Honestly,
Yeah.
God can only do that. And yeah, so I think just kind of taking a step back and trusting a lot of it to the Lord, and just realizing, what my role is. And my role, probably 99% of the time, is not to sit and just regurgitate facts to this person and make them, understand through arguments why the Catholic Church is true.
Yeah. What have you found has been one of the most sort of powerful tools of apologetics for you?
I would say, I mean, I'm going to plug Catholic Answers, obviously, because they're wonderful. I mean, yeah, a lot of their books are wonderful. Jimmy Akin has some great books, Joe Heschmeyer, Trent Horn. All of them have really good writings on the church fathers, on, like, Trent Horn has this great book called Hard Sayings, which is basically what are some of the most difficult biblical passages for us to kind of grapple with. And, like, atheists will bring up slavery constantly. Okay, how do we respond to this? So I would definitely say reading books is super helpful. Podcasts, Trent Horn, Council of Trent, and Joe Heschmeyer, Shameless Potpourri, two wonderful podcasts that are great for apologetics. I love AI, as I've mentioned. So I will say AI has not been super reliable when it comes to apologetics. Like,
Yeah.
it has numerous times it has quoted false passages to me that don't exist. And so I'm like, okay, like, give me a source for that. And then it can't find one. And I'm like, okay, yeah, because it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So I will say, as much as I love AI, I'm not too I'm iffy about that when it comes to apologetics, but Truthfully, is also a great tool for it's like a Catholic AI app. They
Yeah.
might be better than ChatGPT when it comes to, giving you quotations from encyclicals or something like that. Yeah, so I would say that's what I would recommend. Reading articles on Catholic.com. Like you said, anytime you search up a Catholic question, we're the first website that comes up. And so if you want to understand why Catholics pray to the saints or, why we do this or that, like I'm sure there's an article on there that tells you why.
Yeah. That's been my biggest experience in having conversations with, and I'm sympathetic because these people are the same as me and basically say the same things I said a year ago. It's like, well, you pray to Mary. Like there's no evidence for praying to Mary. It's a silly sort of either Semiramis worship or it's completely made up. And what I find is most people are the same as what I was in that, like, have you actually asked why they do that? Wait, like, why,
Yeah.
why do Catholics believe there's a pope? Because I think, Matthew 16:18 that you mentioned. Oh, they say Peter is the rock, so they turn that whole thing into this stupid idea that the pope is a political leader in Rome. And it's like,
Yeah.
if you actually spent the time, and I'm a believer that like truth is truth and truth is objective as well. And if one seeks truth, doesn't matter what they believe, like they'll eventually find it. But the starting point, I think, that stops so many people becoming Catholic is softening themselves enough to just genuinely ask that first question. Okay, I think the Pope is ridiculous, but tell me properly, why is the papacy a thing? How do Catholics possibly get there? Or why do you pray to Mary? I mean, even myself with Mary, when I reverted to the church, I still didn't have my head around Mary at all. For me, the papacy was the thing that got me across the line. But I was like, once I believe the papacy's true, none of the other stuff matters. But
Yeah.
probably over like the last month or two, I've really started to understand the whole Marian theology, and I find it beautiful. And it's just another element of fullness in my faith. But the starting point had to be seeking to understand what the actual answers actually are, rather than telling Catholics what they believe and this is why you believe it.
Yeah.
When are the times, like how often have you seen that happen with people that you are in conversations with, where there's sort of like a moment where they soften and realize, oh, hang on, that presupposition that I've just argued might be wrong? Like, how do you get them to that first point of truly seeking to understand what the Catholic position is? Because it's all good and well saying Catholic answers, but unless there's a desire to go to Catholic answers and find out
Yeah.
that question, they'll never get there, and they'll keep staying in this sort of bubble of Protestantism, telling Catholics what
Yeah.
they believe.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say when I'm conversing with people, especially when it's like on a voice chat or whatever, like if I go live on TikTok and I'm talking to somebody and interacting with them, in that manner, usually I think when I see the shift start to happen is when I start quoting Bible verses at
Yeah.
them and they realize, oh, shoot, like, first of all, she knows her Bible, which maybe their experience with Catholics in the past is Catholics don't know the Bible. They don't read the Bible. That's our
Mm.
stereotype. And so when they realize, oh, shoot, she knows the Bible and also like she has good support for what she's saying. And, I think that's when I see a shift happen. And yeah, so I would say knowing scripture is super helpful, but there comes a point where some people are just going to be kind of like what we mentioned earlier because of differing interpretations, they're just going to say, well, I don't agree with your interpretation. I don't
Mhm.
think that's the right way to interpret it. And you might find yourself, kind of at a roadblock there. But when they're being genuine, I think they start to realize, okay, yeah, Catholics actually have reason for their beliefs. And I find it silly when people think, when they quote, call no man your father, or Catholics break the first commandment to not make any idols. It's like, how silly do you guys think we are? Like, the
Yeah.
Catholic Church has existed for thousands of years. We have 1.4 billion members and counting.
Yeah.
And you think that 2 Bible verses have just completely dismantled all of that? Like, you need to get off your high horse because that's insane. So, yeah, I think it's just the culture, to be honest. I think it's Western culture is
Yeah.
fairly anti-Catholic,
Yeah.
and it's normalized to be anti-Catholic. And so it's just kind of the default.
Yeah.
And once they start actually interacting with Catholics that know what they believe in, they're like, shoot, it's
Yeah.
like eye-opening for them.
Yeah. I had this conversation with a friend recently who I mean, he's a friend from online. He's probably slightly before that first stage of being fair to the church. He'll at least,
Mhm.
I can see a hint of fairness. But he made the point. He said, I just can't work out why the Catholic Church would sort of make these Marian dogmas, in the or whatever it was. Like, they just seem so far fetched. Like, why would they do those? And I was like, well, why would they do them if it's not true? Like, if the Catholic Church is this just antichrist sort of false teacher organization, institution that's been set up and lasted for 2,000 years, you'd fly under the radar, wouldn't you? You wouldn't
Yeah.
you wouldn't do the whole statues and all of that. Like, you'd be like, oh, this is a bit controversial. We'll stay away from that. Let's just not raise our head too much. But it's like, in declaring a dogma about Mary that sure, you can join the dots from Scripture, but it's not there in Scripture alone. Like, to declare something like that as dogmatically true is so bold. Like, and if you're a false church, you just blow your cover straight away, and the whole thing would disappear. But it's like, here it is 2,000 years later, and despite these, as you say, like, blatant idolatry that people call it, it still exists.
Yeah, I honestly think people have to view the Catholic Church in one of two ways. Like, it is the true Church of Christ, or it is led by Satan,
There's no
and
middle.
it
There
is
can't be
leading.
middle ground.
Yeah, there's not. And that's why all the reformers believed the Pope is the Antichrist, that every time Mass is performed, sacrilege and blasphemy occurs. Like, there's no middle ground. And people nowadays, like, again, that's when I mentioned earlier, like, this sort of indifference or this like kumbaya, like, oh, we're all Christians, let's just be happy. It's like, no, like, that's what Satan wants,
Yeah.
because he doesn't want you to see the real choices you have, which is it is the truth, or it is leading souls to hell and convincing them of lies and causing them to sin against the Lord. But I mean, when you go to a Catholic Mass, when you interact with truly good Catholics, like, don't take the worst example of a
Yeah.
Catholic and use that as your standard. Take the best example of a Catholic. And when you do that, you're going to realize, oh, there's no way Satan caused that person to be such a holy person. Like, that doesn't make any sense,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I went when I was sort of in the early stage of sort of being fair to the church and looking at things properly. I went into a cathedral, at least like this beautiful cathedral in the middle of Sydney CBD, which is like one of the basically biggest city in Australia. And I'd had a good 3 years of being exposed to the idea that this, it's all idolatry and it's pagan worship rebranded. I remember walking into this cathedral and just looking up at the sheer beauty of it, and stained glass windows and beautiful building and statues and carvings. And you're like, at the center of this is the cross. Everything leads to the cross, and like the stained glass windows around the outside are telling the stories of the stations on the cross. You're like, pagans have done paganism for thousands of years. If they wanted to keep doing it, they wouldn't waste their time doing all it, making Jesus the center of it. Like, it'd be a great big waste of time for them to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it would be against their values anyway.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
they
yeah.
would find it, horrible to do something like that in the first place,
Yeah.
even for like a good reason.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's silly.
Yeah. Well, Emily, I've loved having a chat. I've loved to get to know you a little bit better. You obviously do a lot of your little short videos, but then now you've been interviewing lots of people, so it's been good to get you in the seat and learn a little bit more about your journey. Maybe just like one question: I'll tell you what mine was, for example. But I spoke before about like points that you can make that initially soften people, that you're like, oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that before. One of mine was Scott Hahn talking about Isaiah. I was always big on types and antitypes in the Old Testament, pointing to Christ. And Scott Hahn talked about like Isaiah 22 and the chief steward being the one that got the keys to the kingdom in the
Yes.
Davidic kingdom. I was like,
Mhm.
wow. I was like, that's a really, really good point. And I've never thought about it. Like, I just never looked twice at that verse. To be honest, I never
Yeah.
even knew that it existed.
Yeah, right?
What's one of your little your favorite little nuggets from the Old Testament that you think points to the truth of the Catholic Church?
Ooh, that's a great one. I mean, I love the typology with Mary and Eve. I think
Yeah,
that's a classic when I first learned about that, or that passage about the Ark of the Covenant
yeah.
and Eve from Second Samuel. I think that's beautiful. I also honestly I love confession, like the sacrament of reconciliation. I love kind of
Hmm.
showing that biblically. I think one passage from I think it's First Samuel 12:13 through 14, where after King David commits murder and adultery, and he's with Nathan the prophet, and he kind of confesses his wrongdoing to Nathan, and Nathan tells him that the Lord has forgiven him, but because by his deed he has utterly scorned the Lord, his sons shall die as a result. And I love bringing up that passage with Protestants when I'm kind of dialoguing about reconciliation and penance, because a lot of Protestants have this understanding, oh, Jesus took it all for us, he
Mm,
took all the punishment for us, and all, and like when we're forgiven, clean slate. And it's like, okay, in some sense, yeah, like our eternal punishment is taken care of because of Christ, but like we still have temporal punishment that we have to work through. And this passage with David is, first of all, revealing that confession is something that happens communally, and it happens with an authority, which was, David and Nathan the prophet. But also there is something that we have to deal with after being forgiven by the Lord.
yeah.
And that's our penance. That's like we have a punishment out of our sin, and that's just. And just because we're forgiven doesn't mean we don't have any consequences now.
Mm,
So I do love that sort of passage and understanding of the Old Testament, and just how, people would confess their sins once a year to the high priest, and he would make atonement for that. So confession is something sprinkled all throughout
yeah.
the scriptures, but that's the first one that came to my mind. So I'm sure if I had more time, I would like
Yeah, sorry.
find a few other nuggets, but
I put you
no, you're good. You're
I
good.
put you on the spot with actually a pretty difficult question. Like, go through the whole Old Testament and pick one nugget here. So I think you've done really. I mean, you even quoted that First Samuel to the chapter and verse. So full credit to you for that answer.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.